for 2.5 months since we've started our regular homeschool, daily lessons. And just as of 2 weeks ago, he asked me about math, and I said, not a problem, I'll make it happen. So now that I can go back, and I'm going to have to redo my 8-year-old as well. She doesn't have the good foundations in math. They're so much focused on the critical and analytical thinking, which is great, but what are they critically and analytically thinking about? What 4 quarters of education are they forced to stay in on the topic of their critical and analytical thinking? Me personally, I want my children critically and analytically thinking about what I want them to interpret and understand according to what my values are. And honestly, how much critical and analytical thinking do you think goes on in my home in the course of one day just to get laundry off the couch? having a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old work together to wrap up a slip and slide. Come on. I mean, let's really get technical here. Because what's happening is if you want to give them a critical and analytical thinking, and this does happen, in one assignment they said rewrite the Bill of Rights. That was the assignment. But there was no education on what the Bill of Rights was, how it came about, who wrote the Bill of Rights, how do you change it. There was none of that going on. So how is a child supposed to analytically and critically think about the Bill of Rights and do an assignment when you don't know the history behind it or the knowledge? And that's another thing. You have a lot of your mastery of skills. How about the core base of knowledge? Where's the knowledge? All of us had a classical education that put man on the moon. That is no more, according to Common Core. So again, if you have questions, please, ask them. I hope I've given you. I've kind of gone off my script, but it's just how I end up doing things. So I apologize for that, and I hope I've covered everything. So I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Is Common Core, is it Sharia law compliant?
Well, it's been written by
influenced by the authors. I do not know. I mean, that's a good question.
It will be. It's the same reason the books are being pulled in some areas. It's only a matter of time before the insidious get there.
Do you need to go through your slides?
Okay. Are there like local meetings of this group that you're in? I mean,
we are trying. I'm just one mom, and my friend Drew Falk, she helps me. But being that I'm a busy mom of 6, I'm trying to get more people involved. But things happen so quickly, so rapidly, and honestly, not a lot of people have gotten up to speed and gotten educated enough to really, honestly, to kind of feel comfortable putting themselves out there to make a difference. I encourage everyone to look within your packet. I've given you websites, I've given you information to go to and find it for yourself, and research what I've given you. Go and do it yourself, but also to, we try to have meetings, but like I said, trying to get the people there to feel comfortable in talking about it.
Just
Go ahead.
real quick, I'm C.J. McAllister. On Facebook, I'm Clint McAllister. It's my given name. I drove from Neptune Beach. Member of the First Coast Republican Club out there. I came here tonight for Debbie. Why? I heard about Debbie. Why? I've heard about Sabrina Wheeler. I've heard about John Mazzaferro. I've heard about Cord Bird. I've heard these people get together. I don't have the option Debbie has. Okay, I've got a 25-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old. I'm a field supervisor with Comcast, and my wife owns her own business. Tell me where I'm going to homeschool, because it's not going to happen. I've got to fight this battle. I've got to fight what's going on. We made a funny joke earlier that I read a satirical article that if Beaver Cleaver was going to school today, in the first 6 weeks he would have been suspended 3 times and expelled, because they've been homogenizing our little boys in school years before this started. We are no longer the strong nation that built it. I think each one of you in here, many of you set the groundwork for what I became. And I'm proud of what I am. I'm from Louisiana. I took my children shooting on Teachers Planning Day. My children can protect themselves, and they know what's right.
man,
And it's about right and wrong. It's the men and women in this room that gave me that. It's my job to give it to my children. I've got to stop this, because they're all going to be running around not doing the things that made this nation great. That's why I'm here. That's why each person here, and I get it that a lot of them y'all are grandparents, and I get it. but we got to get fired up about something. Because we weren't fired up 8 years ago, and now we're in this boat. We got to get fired up. We got to get angry. We have to step up and say the hard words. You want to hear do you think the Janet Atkins story is a good story here?
Tell
You
us
tell-
what we'd like to know, please. I work on the outside.
I'm fired up. Don't call the office because there's a guy in there, Jim, who doesn't know his toenails from a coat hanger. You can't get anything done. So I send 3 emails to Janet and I say, hey, what are you going to do to help us stop the federal government from the gun control in the state of Florida? She never answered. Common Core comes around. I said, well, hell, she's the education, K through 12. Let me find out what she has to say. I said, hey, you haven't answered my other emails. What about this Common Core stuff? What do you suggest? She says, what do you suggest? A firewall. I said, well, heck, if you're not going to do what I want you to do, I need to vote you out. Well, that's not always available. There's not always somebody. I'll find somebody.
That's right.
But I need to know where you stand, Janet. Are you for this or against this? Funny, her email stopped. It was the dangest thing in the world. So I call this guy Jim, and I can't get a hold of anybody. Then I talk to a young lady. She says, I'm going to see her tomorrow in Tallahassee at the K through 12. 10 days later, I don't get a response. Told you folks, I'm proud. Y'all have made me. I did what any honorable man would do. If you're not with me, by God, by default, you are against me, and I will do everything in my power to make sure you're not reelected. My cell phone rang 20 minutes later. She told me over the phone, I am against it as a legislator. I am against it as a parent. I want her in a room because I'm going to ask her. And I'm going to ask her in front of everybody, when we're talking about this, why do you tell me that over the phone and you're not saying it up here on the podium? Because are you going to ask me out loud, am I a liar? Do I have a reason to make this up? I'm a parent of a 6 and an 8-year-old. That I want to have the same opportunities that I had, that everyone in this room provided for me. That's what I want. And that's why I drove from Neptune Beach. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I don't have any children now. Grandchildren are, his grandchildren are old enough that, and they're real liberal up there. Mine are still babies. Okay, what did you mean when you said our boys have been homogenized for the last several years? Tell me what's going on that I
If a
don't
boy
know.
picks up a stick on a playground right now, a normal boy, I'm going to use my testosterone because that's what my aunt called it. A boy's going to pick it up and make a gun or a sword out of it. The minute he does, he's sent to the office because you just threatened somebody else's emotional well-being.
Tell me all the things I don't know
But now,
That would be honestly, that would be a conversation for a totally different time.
Yeah.
Because honestly, yes, because I mean, 5 boys and 1 girl, and he's speaking the exact truth. If the boys just have a high testosterone level, it's how God created them. But what they want them to conform and sit still in a classroom and be the they're ADHD.
They took away recess and don't let them wrestle outside.
Exactly.
So they've got to get it out.
Oh, it
Just
is
sit in
true.
the class.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've got a 7-year-old, and this is how we do school. He's dancing next to the table. I'm like, sentences, ask him sentence, or whatever. Literally, that's what I have to do. He's got to be moving. Where my daughter, she can sit, she can do it. My 14-year-old, I homeschooled him in the beginning, and then sent him for a couple of years to the public school. But if I had not had that time to get him to where I thought and get him learning to where he needed to be, doing it the way that he needed, he would have been classified as ADHD. Absolutely.
By
But
somebody
that's-
who does this stuff, somebody who doesn't have the right background to make that classification, then it becomes a piece of that data that is mine,
Right.
and then that person is stuck with it forever.
And just
When
so-
all they did was take away recess, didn't let them play.
And like I said, this is that could be a whole other topic that we could definitely get into the ins and outs of that more than a couple of hours long. But the thing is that you have to understand is that, number one, these standards are not of any benefit to our children. They've never been vetted. They weren't through a legislative process at all. These standards were, the 2 people that are on the validation panel, 2 of them I should say, refused to sign off on them. And there's actually more professors on the validation panel that are coming out and writing letters saying that these are not going to be adequate. There was no one on the validation panel for these standards for K through 3 for the math standards. So you had someone at the high school and junior high school level writing standards up for kindergarten through 3rd grade. they're age inappropriate. These children cannot learn some of the things that Common Core is wanting them to learn at the ages that they're wanting them to do it. I mean, honestly, this is why my 7-year-old's in tears doing math. I'm not going to have that. I'm not
6
going to have it.
professors out of Georgia have already done it from 3 different universities and said,
Ultimately,
this is
what
not good for
happens,
Georgia.
tell me what happens when they have that standard that's ridiculous? What do you think is going to happen? How's that gonna play out?
Meaning, in the long run, when
When you have a child that's in tears, tell me what you think is gonna happen in the schools when that's implemented.
this is that, him being in tears is because of Common Core, honestly, and the way that they were teaching it.
When that type of math is implemented, what is gonna be the result to the children? Are they
Because
all gonna be falling behind then?
They will.
Yes.
They will. The core knowledge that you're going to, how James Milgram put it is that what happens is the foundations are not being built. Math is foundation by foundation by foundation and going up. These children are not getting the foundations that they need at the lower levels to be able to accomplish what they need at the higher
But
levels
is that
learning of
what
math.
government wants then for the children to?
Honestly, in my personal opinion, I'm going to agree with you, yes. They want them to be status quo, to be right here where they want them and where they can control them at the college and workplace, not the university level and the elite thinking. And this is another thing that kind of just came over me as I'm sitting there with my children and I'm teaching cursive writing. I'm teaching cursive writing to my 8-year-old right now. Other ones already know it. But I walk into the Clay County Library and I'm looking up on the wall, Constitution, Bill of Rights, all these founding documents. How are they written? In cursive. They've taken cursive writing out of the public school system. How are our children supposed to read the founding documents? Do you remember back in the biblical times, who read the Bible? Your scholars. Your scholars read the Bible to the people who were not educated enough. Is that what we're going to have to go back to, is have someone else interpret even the Bible? Because no longer are spelling tests given at the lower levels. K through 2nd grade are not having, or 3rd grade are not having spelling tests anymore.
The other flip
They
side
get
of that,
corrected.
without the
Wait a
math,
minute. They get corrected, but it's never a phonics lesson and you memorize how to write this word. It's you do it the best you can. We'll learn how to correct it later, but it's coming up with your own ways of doing it, and that's how they're teaching the students. So again, I'm a little concerned about that because even when you go and you have your children reading the Bible, or they're making up their own spelling, how can they come and read those documents and read the Bible, and are we going to have to come back and have someone
when I
interpret
reach my
that for
golden
us?
years and it's time for me to go to a doctor, that doctor's still going to think 3 times 4 equals 15, and that's okay. I don't think I want to be there for that.
Go ahead.
If you want to,
Wait a minute, John. Jackie had her hand up.
okay.
I'm sorry.
I had to go pick my grandson today from school.
Okay.
He wasn't feeling well. We were riding home and he's in AB category. But he was telling me, he says, I got this special certificate here so I can get a pass on some homework. And I said, how did you get that? He says, well, Daddy taught me how to do the math the long way and I finished before anybody else.
The long way.
Yeah. Because and honestly that's true, that's what's coming home. I've had parents, call me and say, how do I do this homework? And I'm like, you teach them the way that you were taught and you write it up to the teacher that this is how you're taught, you taught your child at home how to do this, and this is how you will instruct them to do it. And show them, because that's the problem, is that too many of these kids are having to go through this hows and the whys and drawing pictures and all of that with too many of this. And in number one, children, like my son, are not meant to learn that way, especially when it comes to math, which is a lot of numbers. And yes, any words. And another gentleman put it to me, in a scientific way, is that if you've got someone who's got their hand on that red button for that nuclear warhead to fly over and hit China, you better make sure that answer, that scientific mathematical answer is accurate and it's right. Who cares about how you got it? Get it right and then push the button.
Make sure it's China and not U.S. Okay, John.
If you want to have an example of our educational system right now, when you go to pay a bill and it's $14.60 give them a $20 bill and 60 cents.
So different. It is so different.
But the second thing to this too is also this is all about money, folks. This is all about money. It is the root of what all's behind it. As you go around, and I understand we have a board member in here, I sat with Fel Lee and had a very, very animated conversation, enough that They asked in the Beaches Diner if we were okay at our table. I've yet to find a teacher that supports this. Yet to find a singular teacher in 4 separate counties. I work for the cable company. We cover 4 counties. I
know
talk to
2 liberals
people.
in Bradford County. That's
Administrators, politicians like this. For no other reason, that should tell you something right there. It's about the money. It's about going to find it. My conversation with Fel Lee was for locally here. We've got to start local. This is where it's going to happen. I don't believe we can fight Obamacare. I don't even think we need to talk about him anymore because it's a done deal. He's already won his 2nd term. It's over. We need to look at 2016. We need to go forward with this.
We need to be making sure that we're talking to our legislators and banging on their doors, and that's really what has to be done. The legislators
Emails,
have
phone calls, everything.
emails, phone calls. I've made trips to Tallahassee. My trips to Tallahassee are not over. I've sat down with Pam Stewart. I've had the conversation. They have to know that they are accountable to us, the voters and taxpayers of here in Florida, and that's where their job lies, is with us. Not with Jeb Bush, but with us. And that's what we have to reinforce to them. And I ask that most of you are grandparents in here, and you've done your duty of raising children, but I ask that you go and you spread this information with your children who have children of their own in the school system, and make them aware that what you set the groundwork for. And let me tell you something, my grandfather fought in World War II, my uncle fought in Vietnam, rescued injured out of the Vietnam
trenches.
Thank you. I wanted to honor it. You know, he flew the choppers in. He was shot down. Thank God he came home. I've got a brother that wakes up every day and puts that Marine Corps uniform on, and he fights. He's been to tours in Iraq, and he emailed me, and he says, this is not what I'm fighting for. And so I know. He goes, I'm fighting to protect your children and mine, and everyone else's, and this is what they're feeding them? I said, yes, I'm sorry. He goes, this is an insult. A Marine Corps officer at Camp Pendleton is saying this to me. And it's very offensive to him and every other armed forces person who has served. We are Americans, and this is where my true passion lies, is that we are Americans.
Amen.
We are full of the I cans, and that's where my heart is, and that's where my heart lays, and I'm going to protect, and I'm going to do everything I can to protect my 6 children, my stepdaughter, and all the children that are going to come. My children are a joy, they are not a burden, and they are my responsibility, and I'm passionate about protecting them, and I don't care who I take down in the process of protecting them. So that's pretty much
Before we take your question, Becky, is there anything you'd like to say? I don't mean to, this has been rough. I know that's terrible. I'm sorry about all that.
Please feel free to take 5 to
Would you
tell
like
us
to
your
come
opinion,
up and,
please.
I mean, Becky goes to my church and I love her and I don't want anybody being cruel to her. And I just asked her at church if she would come, that we were having Debbie to come and speak. And I knew this little lady here, she is very knowledgeable at what she's doing, and I appreciate her too. And I appreciate Becky, and I appreciate Becky. You know, I'm not putting you on the spot.
It's okay.